From his earliest days in the sand-swept streets of Mos Espa, Anakin Skywalker learned the skills he would need to fight against the bullies who would hound him. By the time he met Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, shortly before his victory in the Boonta Eve Classic, Skywalker had already earned a reputation as a violent slave boy who was not to be messed with. And even after he joined the Jedi Order and studied under Obi-Wan Kenobi, Skywalker found that his old habits died hard. Once, while dueling in a small studio within the temple on Coruscant, Anakin's anger and his need to exact revenge on his bullies got the better of him. When the two other Padawans made fun of him and called him a slave, Anakin quickly turned their own lightsabers against them. If it weren't for Obi-Wan's quick intervention, the three boys might have escalated the situation past the point of no return. It had only been a few years since Anakin had joined the Order. By now, he was already an accomplished Padawan. His abilities in the Force and his lightning-fast lightsaber skills were better than most other children, heck, even some masters. And even though Anakin had only studied for a fraction of the time, one afternoon, as Master Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi escorted Chancellor Palpatine around the temple, the three got a chance to see Anakin in action, up close. On the dueling floor below, a group of 20 young Padawans sat in a circle, watching Anakin perfect his lightsaber dueling techniques against a four-armed sparring droid. At first, Anakin's practice performance was just like any other. In quick slices and dashes, he pushed the droid backwards using his developing knowledge of Form 5 Diam-So to win. But hoping to impress his masters and the Chancellor, who were clearly visible on the balcony above, Anakin clicked a button on a dial and changed the practice droid's configuration. In a sudden flash of blue light, the robot manifested a new image for itself. Through holo projection, it took on the form of a black-cloaked assassin with tiny Zabrak horns protruding from its skull. This, of course, was Darth Maul. The droid pressed a button on the edge of its lightsaber and sent another sword rocketing out of its side, creating a double blade. Now, it was clear to the Jedi Masters watching that Anakin was definitely trying to impress them by fighting Maul, or a recreation of him. With its far more lethal programming, the dueling droid struck at Anakin, but the young Jedi Padawan was able to dodge the attacks by using the Force to leap over its head. When Skywalker was back on his feet, he engaged the droid, and in 2 single swings of his blade, the young Jedi sliced it in 2. While Kenobi, Windu, and Palpatine were certain that the real Darth Maul would have been far harder to defeat, they couldn't discount how impressive the young boy's victory was. After all, Anakin was far younger than Obi-Wan had been when he had defeated Maul on Naboo. But Anakin didn't have time to bask in the praise of his mentors. From the side of the dueling platform, he heard 2 distinct voices as they tried to belittle him.
"He may be good with a lightsaber, but that doesn't mean he'll make a good Jedi,"
a black-haired human said.
"No, after all, he's just a slave to his emotions. It's obvious," the boy's friend, a green-skinned Derosian, said in response. As Anakin surveyed the 2 halves of the droid's body, with spirals of electricity arcing out of it, he tried to ignore the insults. When he was just a boy on Tatooine, Qui-Gon had first taught him to be tolerant, and Kenobi, as well, tried to emphasize those lessons to him. With a deep breath, Anakin tried to forget what the other children were saying. As Qui-Gon would have said, they were just jealous. On Tatooine, they envied that a young boy from their peer group had won the Boonta Eve Classic. And here in the halls of the Jedi Temple, these 2 were jealous that Anakin was already proving to be one of the greatest duelists in the entire Order. But as Anakin felt the rising tide of anger fade from his mind, the human Padawan at the edge of the mat tried to stoke the fire. "Just a slave,"
he said to the Derosian as he laughed, and then Anakin snapped. With a single outstretched hand, he withdrew the boys' lightsabers from their waists, snapping the clip that had been holding them to their belts in the process.
"What are you?"
the Derosian boy asked, the cocky, laughing expression now totally absent from his face. Realizing that their cruel insults had now unleashed Anakin's wrath, they stood still, powerless to stop what would happen next. As they stared at the open ends of their lightsabers, Anakin used the Force to press a button on their sides and ignited the blades. In a flash, the blue and green weapons jumped out of their hilts, and now the 2 bullies were facing the burning end of their own lightsabers. "Tell me, what emotion are you feeling right now?" Anakin asked, as he stared into their eyes, fully aware of how much power he wielded and how little the 2 other Padawans had by comparison. For a moment, Anakin wondered what he would do. It seemed, for now at least, he was just reacting to the other boys. But the situation was escalating, perhaps to a point of no return. The bullies started the conflict with their cruel remarks, calling him a slave. But Anakin's threatening move with the lightsabers brought it to a whole new level. If the Derosian and his human companion tried to retrieve their blades, would they have been forced to duel Anakin? Possibly. Millennia prior, Exar Kun had let emotions get the better of him in a sparring match at his temple on Dantooine. While taking on a Cathar Padawan, Kun felt his ego and the dark side tug on his emotions. In a battle that began with words, Kun nearly used his lightsaber to kill a fellow Jedi, and Anakin now seemed to be following to a similar path. But before the fight could go further, Obi-Wan leapt down from the balcony above and stopped his Padawan. As if his master had turned off a switch, Skywalker felt a wave of shame wash over his body. In his rage, he had nearly used his immense power to hurt or perhaps kill his fellow Jedi. In a sign of contrition, he handed the two lightsabers to his peers and offered an apology. "I didn't mean to frighten you. You're right. I do need better control of my emotions. Please accept my apology." Unsure if they could do anything other than accept, the Derosian and the human bullies nodded and said,
"Of course, forget it."
While Anakin would often find himself at odds with other Padawan training at the academy, this was one of the rare times that he had nearly come to blows with them, maybe even killing them. Now, these are things, of course, that I would love to see in the Kenobi show as a flashback. Moments of darkness from Anakin, red flag moments, we could say, from Obi-Wan's point of view. I think these would be really interesting for us to see, and for us to also understand how Obi-Wan was really dealing with Anakin, and all of the times that Anakin was exhibiting these moments of, I would say, weakness, of darkness, of falling to his own emotions, and allowing himself to be overcome by his anger, by his demons of his past. I see Star Wars fans sometimes, or new fans primarily, making comments about how Anakin's turn in Revenge of the Sith was far too quick when he turned to the dark side. Now, I've made a video about how it was done perfectly all through the 3 films and how we could see a buildup of these moments, not to mention the long past that he has had with his life and being a slave. But I believe moments like this in the Kenobi show could really help connect the dots for a lot of people and a lot of fans that would be able to see, okay, well, Anakin did have quite the tendency for a couple decades of being a slave to not just others, like Watto or the Jedi or eventually Palpatine, but a slave to his emotions. And I think Anakin's theme is that he is just a slave to everything. Slave to Padme, slave to his powers, or in his mind, lack thereof, and his hunger for more. I really feel like showing some moments of darkness from Anakin's past in flashbacks would really help round out his character and fill in a lot of gaps for people who may not be super diehard or read into Anakin's every little move or read the books, for instance, or the comics. This is one of my favorite moments from the comics where we get to see Anakin in his younger years before Attack of the Clones and these little glimpses of Vader. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and my thoughts about it. Leave a like if you did, and I will catch you in the next episode. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.